I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here today. Welcome to the Thursday morning, October 24th meeting of the Board of County Commissioners. My name is Andy Hunthausen. To my left, Commissioner Tom Rolfe. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman.
Tom's left, Brandi Spangler, who'll be taking care of us today. Thank you, Brandi. And to her left, Greg McCauley, Director of Planning and Community Development. To my right, Commissioner Candace Payne. Good morning.
Morning.
And to her right, soon to be, are our two Deputy County Commissioners, Keegan Shea and Nico Hash.
Deputy County Attorney.
Oh, County Commissioners. Yeah, did I say County Commissioners?
You did, and they're
They've been demoted. County Attorneys, excuse me, gentlemen. And welcome, by the way. And Roger Baltz, our Chief Administrative Officer. Good morning, Mr. Baltz.
Good morning.
There is a sign-in sheet in the front as well as an agenda. Please sign in prior to leaving today. And we will start today with our consent action items. Mr. Baltz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. You have 4 items to consider for approval today. The first is item 2A, Vendor Claims Report for week ending October 25, 2024. Staff recommends approval. And Marni Bentley is with us this morning as usual. Item 2B is the public meeting minutes for October 10 and 15, 2024, and staff recommends approval. Item 2C is Resolution 2024-112 declaring county property surplus property, and staff recommends approval of that item. And the last item on the consent agenda for you this morning, Commissioners, is item 2D, Resolution 2024-113 declaring county property surplus property. Staff recommends approval of that item as well. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you, Mr. Baltz. Commissioners, any questions about the consent action items? Is there any public comment on the consent action items? Any public comment? Any public comment? Hearing none, is there a motion, please?
Mr. Chairman, I move we accept we approve the consent action items 2A, 2B, 2C, and 2D as presented by Mr. Baltz.
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Moved and seconded to approve the consent action items as presented. Further discussion, Commissioners? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is a contract between Lewis and Clark County and Tyler Technologies. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Today is a contract with Tyler Technologies that I'm presenting before you. The contract is to expand the functionality of our current credit card contract with Tyler Inc. With most of the county departments using this service, our property tax department only uses it for in-house property tax payments, not their online property tax payments. That was used by a prior vendor, and the contract is not current with them. So we have the ability to go ahead and move these services to Tyler. We would have all our credit card functions for the treasurer's office, along with many other county departments that would have the same vendor. The online payments currently do not allow e-checks or an ACH debit card transaction. This additional service we'd be adding to the credit card contract would allow, I believe, not only our property tax department to have that functionality, but I believe it would allow the other departments as well. And
Thank you. And just in case you didn't, if I didn't hear it right, will you introduce yourself for the record?
sorry,
No worries.
Amy Reeves, County Treasurer, Clerk and Recorder.
Thank you. Commissioners, questions? Just a comment and I guess a question or whatever. I think this is great because we have had limited opportunity for e-checks and debit cards and those kinds of things. This just expands the repertoire of opportunity or flexibility for the payer, for the taxpayer.
Yes, Commissioner Henhausen and our other commissioners. The other thing it'll allow our citizens is a lower rate that they'll be charged the fee. The county cannot take on the added cost of the credit card charges or an e-check charge or doing a debit card. It would not be fair to our other taxpayers for those that want to pay in cash or check to have to pay those fees. So it's up to that individual to pay them. But if they're doing an e-check or an ACH debit card, it's either $1 or a $2 fee, depending on which transaction they want to take versus the 3% transaction fee a credit card is.
Right, much better deal.
Much better deal.
Yeah, I think folks will be happy. Commissioner, please.
So our property owners can actually go online and use a cash card and pay their taxes.
They
with
can
this
use,
new-
they can use a credit card, a debit card, and an e-check once the contract is approved, if you choose to. And then, of course, it will take us a little bit of time for our credit card companies to switch over and get that all active.
Great, make it easier for them to make their payment.
Yes.
Thank
Exactly.
you.
Commissioner, please.
I too have to express my high approval of this. All these young people around, they have no idea that you can write a paper check. This is the way of the future. We've got to keep up. I'm so glad that we are moving into the next century or whatever the method of payment is changing, and this is moving things right along. Thank you for making the effort on this, Amy.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, how about public comment on this item? Any public comment? Any public comment? Hearing none. Commissioners, is there a motion, please?
Mr. Chair, I would move to approve the contract between Lewis and Clark County and Tyler Technologies as explained by Ms. Reeves.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the contract as presented. Further discussion, commissioners? Just grateful for you bringing this forward. This is something that we've been talking about for a long time. Thumbs up. I'm glad we're here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, commissioners.
All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is a request for unobligated American Rescue Plan Act funds. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Ann McCauley, Director of Grants and Purchasing. This is a request for some unobligated American Rescue Plan Act, or as we refer to for ARPA. But I'll give a little background on where these funds came from. So in April of 2023, this board established what we called the Inflationary Set-Aside Fund. And this was due to us seeing a number of projects that had already been obligated. And once they went out for bid, they were going over what we had initially estimated for that. This was largely in 2022 and 23 when we were seeing high inflation and materials and supplies still being hung up. This fund was initially funded with $250,000 of ARPA funds. And so it did allow for when projects did experience needing more funding. And then it also allowed for projects in the occasion that they happened that actually went under budget, again, usually through that bidding process. So I'll share that set-aside summary. This was the summary as of last week, October 15. And if you'll see at the bottom in highlighted yellow, it shows approximately $72,000 is what is the current balance in this set aside that is available unobligated at this point. I do want to note the couple items there in red at the bottom. So projects 42 and 51, the Sheriff's Office and Public Works. Those projects are not fully complete at this time, so those numbers might adjust a little bit. And I think the Sheriff's Office one, just as of yesterday, we are going to see a little bit more expenditure on that project. So it puts that balance closer to $70,000. And that's for the mobile morgue. As we've spoken about quite a bit, Treasury has a requirement that all project funds be obligated. That means under contract, subrecipient agreement, or similar transaction by the end of this calendar year. So this is a $70,000 that we do need to make sure meets that obligation definition. And with that, we do have a project that has come forward from the Public Works Department. And I'll let Jenny Chambers, their director, speak to that. But I will note, if this commission chooses to approve that project, then we would be able to do the interagency memorandum of understanding, similar to what we did a week or two ago with the Water Quality District. So that's an allowable transaction that meets that obligation definition for Treasury.
So just a clarification, in the staff document here, talk about approximately 72,000. That's probably going to be more like approximately 70,000 is what you're saying. We don't need to get hung up on that specific dollar amount. It's whatever the remainder is, if it's 69.5 or 71.2 or whatever, that's what we're talking about. That going forward with intention to obligate it to potentially to this project that Jenny's going to describe to us. Correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank
I
you for,
just-
yes, thank you for that clarification. I think within a week or two, we'll have a pretty dialed in number, and then that will be the number that we end up being able to move forward with,
Right. I
Yes.
just didn't want us to get caught up on
the actual
that
digits.
specific. Okay.
Thank you
good.
very much.
Thank you very much.
Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. For the record, my name is Jenny Chambers, Los Clark County Public Works Director. Thanks, Ann, for allowing the opportunity to talk to you guys about a proposed project to use the remaining ARPA dollars moving forward. So for Public Works, the proposed project would be for an on-site all-weather wash bay. Industrial wash bay is a permanent structure for washing and cleaning heavy equipment vehicles. There are many benefits to having an on-site wash bay at the facility. It would be employee safety. Wash bays provide a secure location for equipment operators to clean the vehicles and the shop mechanics prior to either working on them or just maintaining them overall throughout the year. The current setup we have at the Public Works Complex is outside behind the maintenance shop building. Last year, when I did a walkthrough with Dustin on a couple other proposed projects and looking at overall Public Works site as part of the master plan efforts, the wash bay right now in the winter time is extremely icy. So it's basically just a concrete pad behind the building. When they're in the all-weather condition, and we had that negative 40-degree weather and a lot of cold weathers last winter, a lot of the equipment operators don't want to wash the vehicles, nor would I expect them to want to, because I wouldn't do it either as far as the conditions that they'd have to be exposed to. Plus it turned into an ice skating rink. And there's just employee concerns with just safety of the overall operation. So it got us thinking about, we need to have some kind of all-weather season in order to be safe and moving forward. It provides efficiencies. Being on-site allows us to do that more effectively and efficiently. There is an option within the county where we can go over, kind of over to Les Schwab area. There's an industrial car wash location, but it's not very efficient to drive all the way over there, use the tokens, try to drive back. It provides environmental protection. It would allow us to design a structure that would be able to capture the water that's being run off and then have an oil water separator in order to properly collect that material coming off of that equipment. Provides cost savings, and then it also will provide a potentially another storage location if it's an enclosed structure that we do desperately need down at the Public Works Complex, is more indoor storage for some of our equipment throughout the year. So there's many benefits to the project. We are in the very early stages of the Public Works planning process of this. The next step, if this project is provided, would allow us to move forward with getting professional services such as an engineering firm or architectural design firm to help us complete an evaluation on a preferred location, provide preferred siting location. Also an alternative for that design, whether we do a heated concrete pad or we do an enclosed building structure. They'll help us evaluate the best makeup on what that looks like. In addition, we want to make sure it's phased and evaluated as part of our master plan so that we're not putting in a location that's going to prevent us from growing in the future. So we would want to have a professional engineering firm help us work that effort. And then they'll help us also determine cost, the cost of the full project. Right now, the cost of the project is unknown. We do know that $70,000 will be helpful in that effort. It is highly likely that it's going to cost more than that. So as far as the ARPA dollars, we are confident that that full amount of money is going to be obligated and spent. We'll have to figure out another funding source for the project cost above that $70,000. We anticipate that we would request it in the fiscal year 26 capital improvement budget for Public Works, and or depending upon how some of the projects in our current fiscal year 25 kind of shake out, there might be some cost savings there that we will be able to use towards that project moving forward. So we're confident we'll be able to come up with the dollars based upon what that alternative and design is for that project. But just know that that full $70,000 will be spent for this effort if this project is approved. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Question?
If I might,
Please.
would you anticipate having this large enough to have put your largest piece of equipment in it?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Rolfe, that's a great question. Yeah, we talked a lot about being able to bring in the semi truck with the low boy trailer on there, which is the largest piece of equipment we have on there, and be able to have it, be able to drive all the way through there and be able to wash that whole structure. So really designing the industrial wash bay effectively and efficiently to handle all of our large equipment that we have down at the Public Works Complex.
Well, having come from the private sector and a lot around a lot of mechanic shops, I don't know of any private sector shop that doesn't have a place to do cleanup, to makes their mechanics work easier and less time consuming and more accurate. So I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Rolfe, that's a great question. In the master plan design, the intention is that we need to have a new maintenance building built long-term. And part of that design structure was going to have an indoor wash bay, which is what most of the mechanic shops or even some of the other public works complex have. Knowing that that's a long-term goal and that we have to really phase the master plan, and over time, we're not going to have enough money to build that full maintenance building at this time, but this is kind of an interim solution as we work on alternatives for that master plan, and it won't go to waste. So even if we choose to build that in the future, this wash bay and then the current maintenance shop is still, plan is to be utilized those in the future, and then maybe redevelop something in the future that helps us with long-term growth.
Thank you.
Yep.
Commissioner, anything?
Nope.
Thank you. I was going to ask about this proposal's relationship to the master plan. So I'm glad that you're thinking about that, and that yeah, the money we spend now, if we spend money now, that is able to be built upon as we hopefully phase out the master plan or parts of the master plan as we go forward. So thank you for that.
Definitely, Chairman.
Okay. How about public comment on this proposed item? Public comment. Any public comment? Okay. Hearing none. Commissioners, is there a motion, please?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the request for Unobligated American Rescue Plan Act funds as presented by Ann McCauley and Jenny Chambers.
Second, Mr. Chair.
Moved and seconded to approve this request as presented. Further discussion, commissioners? I just want to say thank you to both of you. We've been, obviously Ann's been monitoring this for us very well. And with that much money coming in and going out the door and projects being in different states of completion or overrun or underrun and all that, and tracking all those dollars and what might be left for projects. And we've had kind of this list of priorities as well, and interest if there were dollars left over. So I'm glad we're getting to address some of that. So thanks for bringing it forward. And thank you so much and Carrie for tracking all this, because it's a lot. So appreciate that. Commissioners, anything else? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. All right. Next item on the agenda is a request for change of scope for Helena Housing Authority's American Rescue Plan Act Award. Good morning again.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Ann McCauley, Director of Grants and Purchasing. Before you is a request for a change of scope for the Helena Housing Authority's American Rescue Plan Act Award. Back in March of 2024, this board approved $25,000 in ARPA local fiscal recovery funds to support Helena Housing Authority in conducting a fair market rent, or FMR, reevaluation for the greater Helena area. A subrecipient agreement for this award was drafted but not executed. And that was because in summer 2024, the state of Montana committed approximately $1 million to do a statewide fair market reevaluation, which would include Lewis and Clark County and the greater Helena area. Helena Housing Authority has been engaged in this statewide effort and their selection of a qualified contractor to complete the statewide work. In October of 24, the state ended up contracting with a firm, and it will include Lewis and Clark County and the greater Helena area as we had hoped it would. Given this recent statewide effort, Helena Housing Authority is requesting a change of scope for the original $25,000 that was approved. And Michael O'Neill from Helena Housing Authority, Executive Director, is here to provide more explanation on that change of scope work.
Thank you. Morning, Mr. O'Neill. You'd introduce yourself for the record, please.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name's Michael O'Neill. I'm the Executive Director of the Helena Housing Authority. I appreciate the opportunity to be with you here this morning. Just wanted to draw your attention. I dropped a little info card at your workplace there. That just gives a little overview of all the housing programs we offer in Lewis and Clark County and surrounding Helena. And we roughly serve 1,800 local citizens, making sure they have affordable, decent homes. This morning, I wanted to give an update on the fair market rent reevaluation project. It's the leadership you showed here at the county and city of pushing this concept forward last spring that caught the attention of the state. And we were able to continue to work on the project to because of the technical challenges related to doing one of these studies, it will be more effective as a statewide effort rather than a small geographic population area. And so they were able to move forward through the Behavioral Health Commission that I think you've been following something of their things to fund this effort on a statewide basis. And we moved forward through procurement and just recently, Department of Commerce, which is a statewide housing authority, is taking the lead and signed a contract with Econometrica Incorporated, which is a economic data firm that does these kind of studies and has a long history of success working with HUD on these kind of things. For this reason, I've been part of that work group overseeing the project, and I was looking for whether there was other opportunities to use our local funds to enhance that. We were looking at things like where's there private data sets that we could purchase, and they really don't. Part of the problem we're having with our fair market rents is that they don't really exist in our area because of our small population and rural nature. And so at this time, I think we're in good hands with the statewide effort. We were able to bring that contract in well below the funding that was awarded to the project. And I think we'll get it done below $500,000 rather than the full $1 million that was awarded. For those reasons, and there's some additional funds if we run into something, I'm asking to redirect the funding for other needs that we have. The Helena Housing Authority, I will tell about you. But I do want to share some good news that our focus, not only locally here, which really is, I think our state leaders looked at what we were doing and said, hey, let's try to do that statewide, because unless we get these fair market rents up, fair market rents increases will address both the affordability, because this is how rental assistance levels are met. We're currently well below rents in our area.
I'm just going to interrupt you quickly. So fair market rents, we've been talking about that, but someone who might be watching today that doesn't know what fair market rents are and what that is related to and how that works, just a little bit.
Absolutely. So HUD establishes fair market rents for every county and certain smaller jurisdictions around the country every year. And it's a kind of a rigorous process, and in areas like our own, that small population rural states tend to fall behind in it. And our recent past 4 years, unprecedented rent increases. Rents have been documented to have gone up about 60% locally in that 4-year period. And so the fair market rent process hasn't kept up. And so fair market rents are used for establishing, a big use of it is for establishing what we can pay in our housing choice voucher program, which is where hundreds of families in our community are receiving rental assistance, and they receive vouchers. They work with our private landlords to obtain affordable quality homes. And but if the payment standards don't keep up your rental market, they can't use them. And so locally, what we've been experiencing is our success rate is the measure of how many vouchers we issue and are actually used. And it's been dropping to about 30%, which is really a crime because people wait for years on a wait list. They get their voucher and then they can't use it to obtain housing. So this is going to address this. The other thing it addresses is making sure that our landlords are being properly, because if they're having to choose to, if they want to work in our program, charge rents that are hundreds of dollars less than the private market, that's a lot to ask. And we have a lot of landlords who are willing to do that for us. But the truth is their costs have gone up. And so we need to make sure that our landlord community is getting the funding they need to be able to continue to offer their critical role in providing housing in our community. And third, fair market rents get at the issue of supply, because this fair market rents is one of those things that developers from around the country look at. And then when they look at the fair market rent, they make a quick calculation. Doesn't pencil out because the fair market rents are too low. So they decide to build someplace else. And the truth of the matter is, when looking at fair market rents here versus other parts of the country, we're way behind and we have a long way to go. And so we continue to work on this. We hope to have success with the fair market rent reevaluation. But because of our focus on this, on our congressional delegation, Senator Tester and Congressman Zinke really putting some focus on this with HUD and with the HUD secretary directly, that we've seen increases. So locally, our fair market rents that were just going into effect for 2025 went up 30% and over 19% across the state. That's really kind of an unprecedented increase, and really is because of the advocacy and the focus of folks like yourself saying this is important, we need to do something different. We're still, but as we said, rents have gone up 60%. So we still have a lot of work to do. We're going to get her done. But at this time, we would ask that with that work going forward, that we would address the other issues in terms of preserving existing affordable homes that we have in the community at Helena Housing Authority and our ability to expand and build additional housing. So the $25,000 that Lewis and Clark County had committed to the fair market rent project, which is no longer needed because of the state funding, that we were going to ask if you would consider redirecting that funding to the Helena Housing Authority to pay for architectural and engineering and related planning that needs to be done related to our redevelopment and expansion of housing at the Helena Housing Authority. So I'll try to give you a very quick overview of what we're involved in. It's kind of a complicated process, but we have 366 public housing residences in the city of Helena. Most folks are familiar with our Stewart Homes campus, which is our original site, first built in 1940, second phase in 52. But then subsequently in 1972 and 1980 and 81, we built additional homes around here in Lewis and Clark County at 30 sites and all in the city of Helena, here in Lewis and Clark County, to provide for the housing needs of our local citizens. Going back to the 80s, public housing funding was cut by about a third in 1981. And then in 1986, they passed what's called the Faircloth Amendment. And they put a restriction on that nowhere in the country, including here in Helena, could you develop even a single additional public housing unit on public housing property. So currently, our public housing, low-income public housing program controls, as part of this, our 366 public housing units in the community, and HUD has a deed restriction on them. So we're entering into, a project called repositioning. And so public housing repositioning, the repositioning part is that we are able to go through a variety of applications, ask HUD to move us from Section 9 of the Public Housing Act to Section 8 of the Public Housing Act. Well, why is that important? It's one of those things where people begin to scratch their head. Well, we get two things happen. We get freed from the restriction on expanding and building additional units on currently public housing property. And two, we will begin to receive assistance levels, rental assistance at a level that are probably close to 40% higher than the assistance we receive from the federal government under the public housing program. That additional assistance will allow us to finance the improvements to the existing homes. As we move forward, our plans are to renovate all the existing properties, both inside and out, improving their energy efficiency, improving physical accessibility features for our aging population. And then finally, it opens up the ability to build additional affordable homes on our existing properties. And that's a big deal. That's a big deal. And so we're really needing engineering and architectural planning dollars so that we can make sure those plans are well-defined and we can be successful. Because one thing this doesn't come with, we do get this additional rental assistance level, which allows us to finance additional improvements. It doesn't come with additional funding from the federal government. And so the $25,000 would be a great aid to our efforts. I think, what's the next slide? Yeah, so these are all the different sites we have around the community. Next slide. You can see they're spread out throughout the city of Helena. Then our public housing sites really developed through 1981 with the city of Helena. And because of changes at a federal level, they stopped in 81. Lots have changed here locally since then. So we really need to catch up. So what we're looking at, in addition to doing all the improvements at our existing properties, and again, at our existing properties, what's different about this proposal is that we'll still be able to serve the same level of residents that we serve today. 70% of those we serve are below 50% of the area median income, and a big chunk of that are below 30%. So folks with some of the greatest needs are seniors and fragile elderly, are working direct service workers, and persons with permanent disabilities seriously would not be able to have a roof over their head without the housing we provide. But we're looking at additional sites, Emmy Anderson and Cutler. We'll show these in a little bit. Our Stewart homes, we have some place where we're going to add additional homes, and that we have Livingston. We have some empty property there that we'd be developing in. And then we're looking at land adjacent to our Tracy site and other HHA sites we may be able to add just here and there. But, we want to pull to the, what's the next one we got? Slide there. So this is an excellent example. What you're looking at there is kind of in the center there is our Emmy Anderson building, which is right off Cruz along 100 South Warren Street. And we're been having conversations with the city to try to utilize and realign some of the streets at Cruz and Cutler, and looking at adjacent properties to try to expand additional housing at that location. I would draw your attention to this lot right there, where the pointer's on. That's 200 Miller Street, and it happens to be owned by Lewis and Clark County. And at a later date, we would like to begin conversations about how that can be part of this expanded affordable housing offering for our community. But to do this work properly, realign streets, design new infrastructure, all those things, very expensive in terms of getting the architectural and engineering right on that. And you guys are very familiar with the cost of that with the work you guys do. You want to go to the next slide? We're also, could you go over where it's the Sharon Park on the corner there? Yeah, so that area there, generally, we've been looking at upwards of 48 additional affordable homes could fit in that corner. And again, not only design of the new construction, but also the overall Stewart Homes property. When I didn't really showcase the historical photos, but we're the only things out there. And so the whole city built around us. And so the infrastructure needs weren't kept up. And so as part of our project, some of the infrastructure is 85 years old. So we're going to need to upgrade that and also make improvements so we can bring on additional housing. So it's kind of an expensive undertaking from a planning perspective in terms of getting the architecture and engineering in place so we can pursue funding to complete these activities. All for that reason, I would ask for your consideration of redirecting the committed $25,000 for the FMR project to redirect that to HHA redevelopment architectural engineering and related planning needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. O'Neill. That was excellent overview and explanation. I bet there's probably a couple of questions. Commissioner
Oh,
Payne.
yeah. It's fascinating. Wow. It's just seeing
I
the
don't usually
aerial
get that
photograph.
response, Commissioner Payne.
Okay.
Usually it's more like eyes glazed over, so thank you.
Oh,
No,
joking.
I'm joking. I'm
this
joking.
is not ice.
Yeah.
Okay, so what is the one building that's there at Sharon Park? Yeah.
Right there.
Uh-huh.
That is actually our HHA Helena Learning Center childcare facility. And it's a space that we lease out to childcare providers. And then we also have a community meeting room there. And it was, it's our most modern building. It's also, we have our board meetings there and things like that. What's, just as a matter of policy, if you allow me, one of the two biggest challenges we really face post-pandemic in our community. One is affordable housing, and the second is childcare. And we have two state-of-the-art childcare classrooms in that building. We have one childcare provider who's been able to stabilize and continue to offer, but YWCA was in there providing a great targeted childcare program. They've just recently gave their notice that they are unable to staff that. We had early Head Start in there. They couldn't staff it. And we continue to face that challenge. And so childcare, what we know to be vital so that our residents can work and do all these things, that these childcare programs, and that's why the commissioners built that about 12 years ago. But all surrounding it, that Sharon Park area is a park that we own. And it has, it's kind of an underutilized playground. We have playgrounds on other parts of Stewart Homes, and this we believe to be a higher use. And we'll be working and needing to work with the school district to kind of, because it has some impact on, along Billings, everyone, that's a parking area that the latecomers to school like to use to slide in and not have to go into the parking lot and things like that. But we think we can develop all the way around where Abbey Street breaks out all the way around, fronting along Billings and around the corner on Roberts. And then if you see along Abbey Street, which is in our interior space here, that we will build additional housing all in there. And I think it will be a great addition because we need to preserve what we have and we need to expand the offerings of affordable homes because it's an all hands on deck kind of situation to address the housing emergency we face.
Our friend Jenny Chambers, who left, has spoken to us about the importance of having a shovel-ready project. So when the opportunity arises, we've got the plans we can show. And I think this is a very important concept for this type of housing. We've got a shovel-ready, we could be in the front of the line as far as some kind of assisted funds to help us with this project. So I really appreciate your thinking about this and recognizing its importance.
Yeah, the first project out of the chute will probably be our Stewart Homes redevelopment because there was a pending what's called a Section 18 application with HUD. And with the fair market rents being adjusted, what I didn't say, that will increase, that really helps out providing the level of funding for ongoing rental assistance that will support the financing, the private financing that will go into the project. But primarily the improvements will be 4% low-income housing tax credits and perhaps 9% low-income housing tax credits. And hopefully the state of Montana is going to come forward with some either state low-income housing tax credits or other housing funding this current legislative year. Because we all, at every level, feds, state, local, we all have to be working together to resolve this problem.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yeah, you mentioned the low income tax credits, and I hope that our state gets on board. It's one of the solutions I think that's on the table for this round. So that will be great. They take that up. Okay, thank you, Mr. O'Neill. Appreciate it very much. And anything else you want to say?
No, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, that's it.
Okay, thank you. How about public comment on this item? Any public comment? Public comment. Okay, hearing none. Commissioners, is there a motion, please?
Mr. Chair, I would move to change the scope of the Helena Housing Authority's Rescue Plan Act award, the $25,000 that was originally set to go for the market analysis to go towards planning, as explained by Michael and Ms. McCauley.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the request for change of scope as presented. Further discussion, commissioners? Again, thank you to Ann and Mr. O'Neill for your great explanation of where this goes. And I can't think of a better way to for this investment to make an impact in our community. There is no doubt that our lack of housing, and especially affordable housing in our community, is a big issue for so many, and so many that are in great need. So this will at least take a baby step in the direction of getting us to that repositioning place that was just described. And I think that's going to be a game changer for our community over the next decade or so. So I'm looking forward to all of that. Thank you. Anything else, commissioners? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Okay. We're on to the next item on the agenda, which is a grant award to Lewis and Clark County from the Montana Secretary of State's office. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. My name is Amy Reeves, Treasurer, Clerk and Recorder, and Election Administrator for Lewis and Clark County. I present to you a grant award from the Montana Secretary of State's office for assisting the staffing costs of our 2024 federal general election. A few weeks ago, my deputy Connor Fitzpatrick presented a grant application seeking a total of $40,912 to help pay for extra staff for the 2024 federal general election. The Montana Secretary of State's office has agreed to provide that amount while requiring no match from the county. This funding source comes from the Help America Vote Act grant, a pool of money that is apportioned to each state from the federal government of the United States. Each Secretary of State's office is charged with further apportioning this money to the counties within the state for election purposes. In the past, the money has been used for items such as polling place supplies or equipment, and now for staffing assistance. This staffing assistance will be used to help us on election night as we work to process absentee and polling place ballots and help us get the results out accurately and timely to the public.
Thank you so much. Questions, commissioners? Any questions? Just for folks' information, I think you said this, but this is not the first time this has been an ongoing thing, this grant opportunity. As you just said, we've used it before. And so normal election year kind of process.
Yes, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, I believe have a grant. I know we've had it since at least 2011 that we've been using, maybe 2001. I might have my numbers a little messed up there. The other thing that's happened recently is we've had some legislative changes. So I think that the Secretary of State's realized that there was the need for this assistance, and we're able to put the HAVA funding in this direction. So with the new legislation, we are facing counting until it is complete. So basically we have to get staffing for round the clock. We're hoping to get a third shift through basically midnight to 8 a.m. And we also have additional reporting requirements that we upload the results every 3 hours. So that also takes away from counting, as we have to stop all our machines and prepare those uploads to get them to the state of Montana. So, and then of course, now that we have results, of course, all our observers and everything also want to copy the results. So it'll slow us down a little bit, but we are hoping to not have a 32 or a 35-hour shift this election. But we're very positive, and we have a couple great ideas to help streamline some of our processes.
Thank you very much. Commissioner.
Amy, when we visited about this idea yesterday, you talked about, and you just now mentioned your 37-hour workday It sound, you could go into ranching with that kind of a, no, that's not what I was going to talk about. Do you pay overtime to all these people? I mean, if 37 hours on one shift, that certainly sounds like you've got about 29 hours of, I don't know what the overtime is right now, but this seems like by having more people, you're not going to have to pay as much overtime.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, we have some staff that is basically our essential staff for the election that will work the full time we're here, that 32, 35 hours, whatever it may be. Usually my election supervisor, myself, and a few other key staff will stay. Usually the tabulation staff will stay. Those staff, some of our staff that comes in are temps, so they may not normally have a 40-hour work week, but if they go over that, and I do have a gentleman that helps me, and generally in about 2.5 days, he's hit that 40 hours and more. So once they hit that 40 hours, they would get overtime. Some of our staff rotates out, but we have a few other key members of our temporary staff that also stay that 24 hours. And I would like to mention that most of our temporary staff and our helpers like that are retired individuals. I have some that are even in their 80s that are staying over 24 hours. And we're trying to, we are hoping that with this new law that we can give them a little bit of relief, because that's not only hard on young people, but it's harder on other people too. And we all just we can't keep up with that pace. So we are trying to do a little bit of different, but this grant only allows me for what's not budgeted. So we were able to hire additional people that we weren't expecting to try to add to the people that are normally helping us with the processes. So we have a couple additional things that we're going to try this year that we needed about 12 different more volunteers for, and trying to streamline some of the stuff so that it's getting to us more timely so that we can actually process ballots faster. We have a lot of things that bottleneck during the election process, and we also have two different actually processes that we're going to double our staff on to try to make that happen. And hopefully we won't be here that long, and none of us will be there that long.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Commissioner.
I really applaud your efforts to try to make it as effective and efficient as possible, and keep up the high quality of count efforts that you do. So thank you.
All right. Thank you very
Mr. Chair,
much.
thank you.
How about public comment on this item? Any public comment on this item? All right. Hearing none, is there a motion, please?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the grant award to Lewis and Clark County from the Montana Secretary of State's office as presented by Amy Reeves.
Second, Mr. Chair.
Moved and seconded to approve the grant award as presented. Further discussion, commissioners. Amy, thank you. Thank you for the good explanation as well. And boy, wish you well the next couple of 2-3 weeks. It's going to be a lot. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work every time, but I really appreciate you and your staff and all the temporaries. Thank you. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Next item on the agenda is resolution number 2024-111 to adopt amendments to the floodplain ordinance and establish the effective date. Good morning, sir.
Always saving the best for last, right?
Here you go.
Good morning. For the record, my name is Warby McNamee, County Floodplain Administrator. I'm here to present on Resolution 2024-111, which is amending the Lewis and Clark County Floodplain Ordinance. Before we do that, I wanted to take a step back and talk about the current ordinance, what's tied to the current ordinance, how the changes come about, give the commission a quick floodplain refresher, and then go over the timeline of events associated with the resolution.
Great.
The current Lewis and Clark County floodplain ordinance has been in effect since September 19, 2012. Along with the ordinance, there are flood insurance rate maps and a flood insurance study. Both of those items carry the same effective date of 9/19/2012. The last time amendments to the ordinance were approved was November 11th, 2022. So what's tied to the current ordinance? First and foremost, federal disaster assistance. So because we have an approved ordinance that's in good standing with the Federal Emergency Management Agency, Lewis and Clark County is eligible for disaster assistance if there's a presidential declaration made. At that same federal level, there are a number of Department of Commerce and Small Business Administration grants that are available to Lewis and Clark County as well. With the ordinance, as well as our voluntary participation in the community rating system, residents are eligible for a 10% discount on their flood insurance premiums. So how the changes started and then followed through with? Well, first, FEMA takes a look at updates to technology, and they also take a look at expansion of possible definitions within the floodplain management realm. Those changes are filtered down to Montana DNRC floodplain program. The floodplain program is in charge of developing a state model ordinance, which has the sole purpose of alleviating stress and time and money on local communities having to develop a floodplain ordinance from scratch. Once they change the state model ordinance, local communities are allowed to take a look at the changes and then make minor tweaks to it in accordance with how they run their individual floodplain programs. So for the commission's refresher, I've provided a quick floodplain overview. Some of these items will allow for further understanding when we take a deep dive into the amended floodplain ordinance highlights. First is the regulated flood hazard area. This is also known as the special flood hazard area or the 100-year floodplain. Within the regulated flood hazard area, there is oftentimes a floodway. And the floodway is the area where engineers have determined the fastest and deepest floodwaters will flow. This is best represented in figure 1 on this slide. The flood fringe is the outer boundaries of the floodplain. There doesn't necessarily have to be a floodway within the flood fringe, and this is best represented in figure 2 of the slide. The base flood elevation is essentially the elevation where the 100-year flood frequency will occur at. And this piece of technical information really determines the boundaries of the regulated flood hazard area. And then finally, letter of map revisions. So letter of map revisions are usually started by developers or other state or federal agencies proposing to do extensive work within the floodplain. If they are doing extensive work in the floodplain, oftentimes they'll change that base flood elevation. And if it hits a certain threshold, FEMA says, well, hold on, you're changing that enough that you have to change the maps. And this first step in changing or revising the maps is getting what's called a conditional letter of map revision. And that basically says, in order for you to change the maps, you have to comply with local floodplain management regulations. And once you do that, then as FEMA, we'll take a look at the larger revision, basically ensuring that all the checks have been in place along the way. So a quick timeline of events associated with Resolution 2024-111. In the early part of this year, Lewis and Clark floodplain program started working with FEMA and Montana DNRC to review the proposed changes to the state model ordinance. By the summer, Lewis and Clark County got notification from FEMA and DNRC that our minor tweaks were accepted by both agencies. Legal notice for the readings, as well as notice of public comment, were posted in the Helena Independent Record on August 31st, 2024, and again on September 7th, 2024. The deadline for public comment was set at October 7th, 2024, with one comment being received. That comment wasn't relevant to the amending of the floodplain ordinance process. I did reach out directly to provide guidance and resources to the property owner to address that comment. A copy of the amended floodplain ordinance was posted on the Lewis and Clark County website starting on August 31st. And then, as the commission is aware, in your commission packet, there is a staff report that recommends approval of resolution 2024-111. And then the last items are the first readings, which are occurring today on October 24th, 2024. And then the second reading, which is suggested to take place on November 7th, 2024.
So just to clarify that, today we listen, ask questions, offer public an opportunity, and then we set a time to hear this essentially again, or take it up again on the 7th of November for a decision. That,
Mr. Chair, Commission, that's correct.
okay, just wanted to clarify. Thank you. Go ahead.
So if I haven't lost you all yet, let's fasten our seatbelts and enjoy some deep dive into the amended ordinance highlights, right? So section 1, the proposed changes look at the role of floodplain administrator. So in the current ordinance, the floodplain administrator is specifically tied to a title within the Community Development and Planning Department. The proposed change moves it away from a specific title and then just leaves it within the department. This allows for greater flexibility and the avoidance of having to amend the ordinance if there was a title change or if there was staff turnover. Rest assured, I have no plans of going anywhere anytime soon. So for the time being, you're stuck with me, right? Section 2, definitions. And again, I kind of get back to when FEMA takes a look at floodplain management as a whole, definitions expand, most notably to the inclusion of historical structures. That work was specifically done by FEMA in cooperation with the Secretary of Interior to develop a robust definition for historical structures. So section 4 saw the bulk of the proposed changes take place, starting with section 4.1, regulated flood hazard area. This specific provision acknowledges and incorporates flood studies that might have been undertaken by other federal or state agencies. So just to give a little bit of background, general practice for anybody that comes in seeking a permit or possible development within the floodplain, if we don't have a certain amount of technical data, we will look to see if the federal highways, MDT, or some other agency did some technical study in that area to provide some cost saving and time saving to applicants. Again, this is just general practice. This proposed change actually puts it in the ordinance so that folks can look at it and say, oh, well, I can tap into this, I can tap into that, and help me save time and money. It will go through the same review process that we usually do, but again, it provides them an avenue to really save time and money.
Andy. Just as a clarification for inclusion of technical information. Could you give me a little picture of what the heck technical information would be included in this definition or in this?
Sure, Hunter Housing Commissioner Payne, sure. The base flood elevation is a piece of technical data.
And what is the base flood elevation?
So the base flood elevation is essentially the elevation above sea level that the 100-year floodwaters will flow at. So that basically is the floodplain in a nutshell. So if they're refining the floodplain and they need to find that base flood elevation, oftentimes they're tasked with creating a technical study or hydraulic analysis in order to find that piece of information.
Okay.
So, a lot of times if MDT is doing work within the floodplain on road stuff, they'll have to find that base flood elevation to determine whether or not they're going to impact the floodplain.
Okay.
It provides an avenue for applicants to save time and money by using that information.
Sure.
Yeah.
You don't have to reinvent the
Right.
wheel.
Right.
Okay. Thank you very much. It's helpful.
Yeah, and it's pretty common. So I think our development community often will say, "Hey, has there been any other projects done around my project? And do they already have data out there that I can use so I don't have to reinvent it or establish that data?" That happens all the time, right?
Chair Hunter's Commission, that's correct. So oftentimes we look very locally to see if an individual property owner has filed some sort of technical data with FEMA first. If not, we'll expand out to the state. And then oftentimes we have to look at the broader federal level to see if FEMA or somebody else has done that. But again, this specific item puts it in the actual ordinance, whereas before it's just been kind of generally accepted practice to do that.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
Thanks.
So continuing on, section 4.2, interpretation of the regulated flood hazard area. Again, this kind of gets back to Commissioner Payne's point where it really is putting within the ordinance that need for the base flood elevation to really determine the boundaries of the floodplain. Section 4.2 has caused a lot of confusion to applicants or prospective applicants about what they're might be required to submit or what, we might ask them to submit for the permitting process. Again, this just gets back to providing clarification that really the rule is the base flood elevation technical data is needed right off the bat. Section 4.3, alteration of the regulated flood hazard area. This provides an understanding and recognition that if an applicant is going to undertake that letter of map revision process, their first step is to make sure that they are going through the conditional letter of map revision process. And again, that means meeting all of our local floodplain management regulations before going to FEMA and saying, I want to change the map in this big, broad way. So we start with step one, and then they can get to the finish line that way. Section 5, uses allowed without a permit. This is actually removing floodway maintenance from this section. As the commission will recall from the floodplain refresher, the floodway is the area where engineers have determined the fastest and deepest floodwaters will flow. So when we remove floodway maintenance from this section, we ensure that the carrying capacity in that channel isn't altered by accident by performing some maintenance in that area. Section 8, floodplain permit criteria. There was a couple of grammatical errors that FEMA caught and the state caught after the last adoption. So all the content is staying the same. We're just cleaning it up a little. In section 10, accessory structures. So as you may recall, when I was talking about FEMA periodically takes a look at updated technology. When FEMA took a look at accessory structures that are used for parking and storage, they released a technical memo basically streamlining the process for permitting for accessory structures used for those purposes. With that release of a technical bulletin, they've essentially cut the red tape and provided an easier pathway to permitting. So we wanted to make sure that those changes were in effect for potential applicants in Lewis and Clark County. And then section 3, 6, 7, 9, 11 through 15 in the appendix didn't have any changes made. So to quickly wrap up my presentation, a couple of action items associated with Resolution 2024-111. The first being the commission will consider adoption of the amended floodplain ordinance after this first reading on October 24th, 2024. Staff will ensure that a clean copy is posted on the Lewis and Clark County website after this public hearing, and will ensure that a clean copy is made available in the Community Development and Planning Office. Second, the commission will set a date for the second reading and final adoption of the amended floodplain ordinance, not less than 12 days after the first reading. Again, the suggested date for that second reading and final adoption is November 7th, 2024. And then finally, the effective date of the amended floodplain ordinance will be 30 days after the second reading and final adoption of the amended floodplain ordinance. And again, if you go off of that suggested November 7th date, that effective date would then be December 7th, 2024. And so with that, I wrap up my presentation and will happily answer any questions.
Thank you very much. How about questions? Yes, Mr. Hash.
Mr. Chair and Commissioners, I know I don't normally do this, but I think we hear a lot of like the 1% floodway as well. I know you mentioned the 100-year floodway. Is that the same thing or are there differences in that?
Chair Hunt Housing Commission, just a point of clarification to that. So it would be the 1% annual chance, and that is the same as the 100-year or the regulated flood hazard area. Essentially, the nomenclature is different. The science behind it is all the same. Yes. So to add confusion to everybody, we can call it by different things at any given time, still be on the same page.
Please.
So and I'm just doing this because I know that in the past we hear 100-year floodway. And it's like, oh, well, it flooded 3 years ago. So I'm good for 97 more years. And I think that we see that change to acknowledge that 1% thing is that's kind of on your annual basis, right? So we're saying the same thing with those different words, but as we've learned, when the 100-year words get used all the time, people think, okay, this is only going to happen once every 100 years. And that's not necessarily a regulatory guarantee from anybody about what can happen on any annual basis. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Thank you. Yeah. Would you like to
Yeah,
provide?
Chair Hunt Housing Commission, that's correct. So it's the 100-year flood event can happen multiple times a year. Most notably, I think that we can take a look at the past events of a couple months ago with the hurricanes hitting Florida. And again, I'm not at all assuming the amount of rain or storm surge or whatnot, but you know, again, when you're talking about percentages, back-to-back hurricanes can happen. They happen. They happened this year. Same thing with riverine flooding. It is, again, a term that for myself, I don't like to use. So, you know, if I'm talking to residents, I'll say, you know, high risk flood zones or things like that to really kind of get them past that. Well, I'm good for 97 more years, 98 years, or what have you. And just really get them to understand that it's the risk and it's the area and the location. And if they have questions about the frequency, then we can kind of talk about base flood elevations and things like that on a greater level. But for common usage, yeah, I generally steer clear of those terms.
Thank you. Anything else? Anything else? Please.
Maybe just an apology to Warby. I didn't mean to put you on the spot there, but I remember hearing that presented to me for the first time, and it kind of opened my eyes and understanding, okay, well, what we're looking at here is not, you know, these catastrophic events necessarily that we see, you know, throughout time and think, oh, okay, well, that only happened, you know, back in the 60s, or that was a, you know, a big flood that happened in the 70s. So we're looking at these regulations, you're saying, we're also looking at it from what can happen on an annual basis as well. And so obviously I leave it up to Warby, who does a far better job than I can to wrestle with it all. But I just remember that moment and it changed my life forever. So
Yeah,
I wanted to put
good.
that out.
Well, I hope folks are listening and understand it better. Thank you. Any questions or comments at this point? Commissioners, how about public comment on this item? Public comment on this amended floodplain ordinance proposal. Okay, so Warby, just to make sure that we're on target, get it right. Are we to take action to adopt the first reading, or just take action to say we heard it and we're going to set a date for the second reading? Just to clarify.
Chair Hunt has in commission, please adopt the first reading and then set the date for the second reading.
Great.
And then if I got things wrong, I can turn the tables on the county attorneys that just spoke up, and they
Put them
can
on the spot.
provide feedback on those specific items, because you know, they know more in this case than I do.
I thought that's what we were going to do, but I just wanted to double check. Perfect. So commissioners, I would be looking for a motion to adopt the first reading of the amendments to the floodplain ordinance and set a date for a second reading for November 7th at our regular scheduled meeting.
So moved.
Second, Mr. Chair.
Moved and seconded to adopt the first reading of the amendments to the floodplain ordinance and and set a date for the second reading for November 7th at a regular scheduled meeting. Any further discussion, Commissioner? Warby, as always, thanks for the education and appreciate the information. All right, with that, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Thank you very much. Okay. We are on now to the time in our meeting where we will take public comment on any matter that is under the jurisdiction of the commission, but not on today's agenda. Is there any public comment? Good morning, sir. If you'd state your name and address for the record, please. Welcome.
I'd like to record this so I have a record of it, please. My name is Jim Strawn. I've spoke with all of you. I live at 8187 York Road in Helena. It's up by York and the Vigilante Campground. And so I spoke with all of you guys repeatedly.
Mr. Strong, we're recording this as well. So get up there to the microphone. So
Oh,
make
okay.
sure, and is the
All
green
right.
light on? The green light at the base of the microphone on there?
Yes,
Or is
sir,
it red?
is.
Okay, good. Just want to make sure you're being recorded. Thank you. Well,
All right. So, start over again. So I spoke with all of you and previous county commissioners. This has been a long, ongoing, issues, and it was kind of interesting in that a lot of the stuff that was discussed at today's meeting were some of the issues that I have encountered and brought forth previously. And so I'm going to kind of start at the beginning, and this isn't all of the issues that I have to bring forth, but these are some of the main ones and the ones that I would like to outline today. And so we'll start with voting integrity. and the issues that I had surrounding voting integrity on a road improvement district initiated by Lewis and Clark County. And of course, I live in a really small town, one bar town, lots of rumors, not too much stuff goes on in small towns that, you know, doesn't get fed into the rumor mill. You kind of got to pick out what's true and what's not. A lot of times it's based on slivers of information and then exaggerated. So, I mean, I'm not talking about anything, but so on this road improvement district, you know, I can go into the details. I don't know if I've discussed this with you. It's been a long time ago. And so again, that's part of the stuff is when I bring this stuff up, they go, well, the statute of limitations is gone now. And so there's no reason to investigate any of these accusations or even validate whether or not they occurred. And basically that's, you know, what I was trying to initiate all along is whether or not this had occurred and the legality of it. And so if you want to discuss the road improvement district, I certainly can. It started out the rumor mill, they're going to get federal funds, Lewis and Clark County to pave from the York Bar to do a chip seal from the York Bar up to the end of the pavement. And they were going to get federal funds and needed matching county funds. And they were going to initiate this road improvement district process, which had to be voted by a certain percentage of the landowners that were going to be involved in this process. And so, again, the same people have pretty much, if you will, run our York Community Club, the fire hall, kind of the government entities, if you will, that interacts with Lewis and Clark County. And it was pretty widely known that we were going to vote on this. And so some ballots showed up in our mailbox, or as I found out later and others found out later, they turned out to not be real ballots. It turned out that later on it was said that it was a questionnaire. And so this I don't know the right word, I apologize. But so this document showed up in our mailboxes and everybody voted and returned it. And then after it was returned, and again, you know, this is what the rumor mill said, is that it didn't pass, it failed. And at that time, we're like, well, all right. Oh, we can't forget that Lewis and Clark County said that they were going to tear up the pavement if the road improvement district didn't pass. We were going to tear up the pavement that's there now, return it to a dirt road and pave it twice a year. And so that was kind of the kicker on the whole deal. And so they said, yeah, that was just a questionnaire. Now we're going to pass, now we're going to take a real vote. And there was a lot of questions surrounding the real vote in that there was a larger number of people that were allowed to cast a vote. So in some instances, one property would be allowed to cast more than one vote. Again, they said it was based on the way the property was titled with the county. So if there was a man and a wife's name on it, they would get 2 votes. But if there was a single owner, they would get 1 vote. So that was one of the issues that came up. Again, I don't know if that was true or not, but that was one of the issues. Also, a number of neighbors came forward and said that they never received a chance to vote at all. They didn't receive the questionnaire in their mailboxes because they didn't have a mailing address there. They owned the property and were responsible for the costs of this road improvement district, but they didn't have a mailing address. And they said they didn't get to vote at all. And so those were just some of the issues. It was voted on the second time with the real ballot, and this time it passed, and they did that. Since then, that was the initial deal, and since then I've faced quite a bit of retribution, and I'll give you a few examples. So my dogs were killed, my windows were shot out, I was forced off the road. Lewis and Clark County snow plows started turning their plows as wide as they possibly could and coming over the center line when they met me. Among other things, they also pushed debris from way down the street, other people's property, up to my property with their snow plows and then pushed it over the bank. I'm talking about some big trees and chunks of trees that had fallen down into the road. And so, those were some of the tactics to apparently dummy me up as to what the future should hold in regards to those types of things. So that's that issue. Let's again, your previous speaker talked about the costs of boundary realignment. So the next thing that came down the pipe between Lewis and Clark County and Lewis and Clark County, and this one was the Forest Service, the same individuals that had done the road improvement stuff decided that they were going to get involved in this boundary realignment. And so some people had a direct input into what the boundary realignment should look like and who should bear those costs. And some landowners up there, and they said, well, it's a personal agreement between two landowners in some situations. So we're doing all this surveyor work. And if the boundary line ran down the creek and now one guy owns a sliver of the creek on this side of the creek, and an opposing landowner owns, and I'm using this as an example, a sliver of property on the opposite side of the creek, under this boundary realignment, we're going to make it so that they now can enter into a private agreement so that they each own their own side of the creek and they don't overlap, and the boundary line is more conducive to property values, I would say, probably more than anything else. And so that went on. In my instance, a lot of landowners made out like $1 million. And I got to get back to the road improvement district. But first I'll finish this thought. A lot of landowners made out like $1 million. Their properties increased in value dramatically, and that all of a sudden they were awarded more creek frontage. In my situation, and I'd been there for, my father and I had owned the property for 50 years. We had access to 5 or 6 different surveys that all validated the property line that was there. But under this boundary realignment, all of a sudden I don't own my backyard anymore. They said that the Forest Service said that they were going to take into account easement issues. And so after this, some easement issues arose. Power company came and strung a power line over the top of my metal roof. There was about 4 foot of clearance between the power line now based on this boundary realignment. And I now own the entire street in front of my house, the paved street, which previously I never owned any of the street. It came right down that side of the road. And I own a cliff on the opposite side of the road. I no longer own the part that I've mowed and my father maintained for the last 50 years. Again, some of our septic drain field may or may not be within this boundary. I lost a whole bunch of creek frontage as a result of the boundary realignment. And again, I didn't know anything about this while it was going on until they showed up and said that they were going to do this boundary realignment. They then asked me if I wanted to be there when they did the boundary realignment. I said, yeah, I'd like to be there. I want to confirm that my boundary is still where it's always was. And they said, yeah, we'll make sure and contact you. And so they contacted me, and he parked down by my mailbox, and I went down there to meet with him, and he opened his tailgate and started unloading a lot of equipment. And I sat there and we started BSing, and we talked about bike riding and hunting and this and that. And I'm waiting for him to start on the boundary realignment. Pretty soon, a couple of hours go by, maybe 3. Bob Trinan comes up from down below, and we're all sitting there BS. And I'm like, let's get on with this boundary realignment, fellers. And he gets in his truck, loads all the stuff up, gets in his truck and leaves. I'm like, wow, that was weird. I thought we were doing a boundary realignment. So I walked from my mailbox to the backyard, the boundary that we're mostly talking about in this situation, and all the signs identifying what side of the property line is Forest Service and what side is private have now been removed, and they're relocated. There's also my father's and my previous surveying pins were all pulled up and now gone, which I know were there 24 hours earlier. I surveyed my property before when he told me he was going to be there the next day to to let me watch them do this boundary realignment. So I brought that up and they said, well, did you see them remove your things? I said, no, I was kept busy out by my mailbox while they were doing this. Can you identify who did that boundary? And they couldn't identify exactly who did mark that boundary. But again, now my surveying pins are gone. There's a new stone placed there, which apparently is the origin of, or has something to do with this boundary realignment. And so, again, I've asked for an investigation. I'd like to have some understanding of how this works. I've gone to the Forest Service. I've gone to Lewis and Clark County. They tell me that I need to hire an attorney and a surveyor. And part of this process, I was sent to meet with an attorney. I went and met with the attorney with all of my documents, and he made copies of all of those documents, charged me a flat fee of $250. When I reached back out to him, apparently he now worked for the state of Montana, and he wasn't in private business. Again, I'm not an investigator. I have no investigative authority, but again, it seems like there's some real shenanigans going on here, if you will. So that's a portion of my boundary realignment. I have a lot of documents. I have a lot of times and dates and people that I've met with and who's involved in this process and what their connection is to some of the stuff that's gone on previously. Back to the boundary realignment, back to the road improvement district is the same people that, again, that profited greatly from this boundary realignment. And after the road improvement district went through, and I made this aware, and this was part of the retribution, is that the county showed up with, I think there was 5 dump trucks, 3 or 4 front end loaders, a mass of county equipment. And what they did is they pulled up to the neighbors that were most directly involved in this. And they did thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars of improvements on their properties. And that takes us to the floodplain thing. Two of the houses, I don't know how they ever got permitted because for about 2 or 3 months out of the year, they have this much water across their property down there. It's, I would classify it as a floodplain. And again, the rumor mill when they were built was going, how the heck did they get a permit to build those houses? Or what process did they go through to be able to build those houses down there where it floods? And so the road improvement district and the Lewis and Clark County equipment brought in thousands of yards of fill that they took by widening the road. And as they worked their way up the road, as they widened the road, they would improve these driveways and raised them up probably, this much or this much, so they could get in and out of their properties when it was flooded. They also did 2 building sites, and they even compacted the fill that they brought in for the 2 houses that were later built. And again, the same players are all involved in the building of these houses. Their friends are the ones that ended up purchasing them. So again, it seems like a really shady situation that I have tried to get somebody to give me an explanation of how this can go on and how those people can benefit greatly from Lewis and Clark County. And I now own a cliff in the pavement and don't own the lawn that I mowed for the last 30 to 50 years. My dad owned it previously. So those are some of the things that I've run into. Now we have to talk about the response from Lewis and Clark County into the retribution and intimidation tactics. You know, when somebody kills your dogs or shoot out your windows or puts you in the ditch and wraps you around a tree and you're left in there for 2 or 3 hours with the steering column crushed against your broken bones. And the same players that you've been bringing forth some of these clarifications from are now responsible for removing you from this crashed vehicle that you were forced off the road opening day of hunting season. The individual that did it was parked at the York Bar, and when I almost got there, he pulled out in front of me, and I finally got around him 5-10 miles an hour for miles and miles. And when I try and pass him, he'd speed up to 30 or 40 miles an hour. At any rate, I ended up in a tree over that episode. And so this has gone on and on. I've gone to the feds and the feds tell me that it isn't a federal issue, but I'm going, well, when some of these players follow me across multiple state lines on some of my fishing trips or snowmobiling adventures, and all of a sudden they're coming up the groomed trail in the opposite direction on the wrong side of the road at you, that might be a little bit intimidating. And again, I would think that that would make it a federal crime. And so part of what I'm asking you today is to go to the feds and let's see if we can get an investigation into some of my accusations. That's where I'm at on this. The feds keep telling me I have to go to Lewis and Clark County and the state of Montana. I've been there on multiple occasions, and I have a lot of other retribution and strange going-ons that, I would like to discuss. But in discussing the response from Lewis and Clark County, when one of my windows was shot out, I called it in, and then later they couldn't find the report, and they go, oh, the other guy called it in. The guy that shot out your window called it in and said you were following him. So stuff like that where they do a spin on it. I accuse somebody of running me off the road. Well, then they call it an hour later and say that I ran them off the road, or I was driving in an irresponsible manner. So, they obviously know how to use the system to do that. But so I had I think over 30 calls for assistance or requests. And in the course of that, I've asked for the records and the documents and some feedback as to what happened the last time I got forced off the road and I called you guys. Did you contact that individual? Where are we at on this? And within a couple of days, it had happened again, probably to a more extreme nature. And so between 20 and 30 requests for service, never got called back once and told where we were at on any of this stuff. They tell me that I need to reach out to the individuals involved. And so under some of this, some of my state issues involved fish and game. And so apparently they were running some kind of a surveillance operation on my property. And they were having him housed in a person's house down the road. Apparently he was making it appear like he rented it, but my dogs would go off all the time. And clear, it's Forest Service property. They can be up there on the Forest Service, but they can't, mess with my dogs at midnight and 2 a.m. For months and months and months, and pull into my driveway at 2 a.m. and shine their lights on my house, and tactics like that. Hear stuff hit your windows again. I don't know if it's a BB or a rock or what it is, as this is in the middle of the night. So those are some of the tactics. And then I go to Lewis and Clark County and try and get a response from them. And on that game warden thing, my daughter finally got a picture of him outside our picture window. He came down and knocked on them from the hill from his post and asked if he could fill his water jug right after I left. She was smart enough to get a picture of him, and about 4 or 5 days later, he no longer worked for Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. But Lewis and Clark County, when I brought that up and I said, where are we at? Can that guy be in my yard? It's marked and so on. Does he need a warrant? How does this work? Lewis and Clark County told me that that was a state issue and that I needed to go to the Fish and Game to have that addressed. I did, and it was covered up. These are just some of the issues that I've had with Lewis and Clark County. And then 2 of their comments stand out quite a bit. One of them was when I asked if it was legal in their response to some of these issues, they said, Jim, we can't break the law. We are the law. I'm like, that's an interesting concept. Then the next one that really stands out, and this came more from the county attorney's office, but also the sheriff's department. And I don't know that you personnel were even there when some of this stuff happened. So again, I don't know where to put the blame. I'm asking for an investigation, but they told me, Jim, you're awful naive. We keep hoping that you'll figure this out after 20 some calls to us, that if we don't investigate it, it's certainly not going to go to the county attorney's office, and the county attorney certainly isn't ever going to prosecute it. And so that kind of pretty well summed up what I was experiencing and what was going on here. And so that's what I'm here today. I mean, I'd be happy to go into a lot more of the details. There's been some other strange stuff that went through the rumor mill. We had a Lewis and Clark County conservation easement that had, again, you know, you don't know what's true and what's not true, but it involved the past county commissioner and supposedly this was going to be done first. And then you hear the other side of it. No, you can't get that conservation easement prior to the transaction taking place. The other neighbors need to initiate it again. I don't know. I'm not an attorney. I'm not an investigator, but through the rumor mill, it certainly sounded like there was some kind of shenanigans going on. Again, it appeared like that landowner might have benefited from the boundary realignment also. But I mean, I don't know, but it appeared, you know, from out on the road that he had acquired some more Forest Service land and no longer owned the right of way or any property on the other side of the road. Again, I don't know. I'm asking for an investigation. This is what some of the rumor mill stirred up. And, you know, it's kind of alarming, I would think, if any of that stuff is true. But that's where I'm at. I guess in closing, I wish maybe you guys would try and initiate a federal investigation into some of these shenanigans, because I think that there's a clear conflict of interest, whether we're talking about the state of Montana investigating this stuff or Lewis and Clark County investigating some of my accusations. But again, I'm not an attorney and I'm not an investigator. I'm just the guy that they're gonna run out of town.
Well, thank you, Mr. Strong, for your comment. Really appreciate it. And
Yep.
we appreciate you being here today.
Okay. Well,
Thank you.
would you let me know what action Lewis and Clark County might take in regards to my ask?
Well, today is public comment and your public comment is on the record, and all public comment we listen to, and each commissioner can consider that as they choose. We appreciate your comment today. Thank you very much.
Would you let me know what action you might take after you have had a chance to review what I'm asking you to do? Just give me a yay or a nay if we're going to cover this up some more, or if maybe we might finally address it.
Mr. Strom, today we're just listening to your public comment. We're not committing to anything. We're listening to your public comment. You've had an opportunity to do that. We really appreciate you being here. We heard your public comment, and we're going to leave it at that.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Yes. Okay. Any further public comment? Any further public comment? Seeing, hearing none. Commissioners, thank you for a good meeting. We will stand adjourned.